To create a pop-up with the zoo rules, we will use the photograph of this Asiatic lion, which will be positioned on the right side of the element, and on the left side we will include some general information about the park. In VS Code, let's start by placing this element after the SVG, here at the end of the page. And we will begin by opening a div element with a class name overlay. Then an ID of overlay as well, and then close the div. After this div, we will create a new one with a class name Popup and an ID of Popup as well. And then inside this Popup div, we want another div, and the class name will be content-container. Inside this new div, we will create now another one with a class name text-container. And to finalize, we create an h2 with text rules inside the zoo. After this h2, and still inside the text container div, we create a p element or a paragraph element where we will write the main rules of the zoo. Let's start with the first one. Do not feed the animals. They are fed daily with a specific diet. Let's move to the second one, create another p element, and the rule number 2 will be don't bang on the glass, shout, or tease the animals. You could disturb them and prevent them from showing their natural behavior. Then for the third paragraph, let's type don't go beyond the safety barriers of green areas or animal habitats. Let's create another one. This will be the number 4. And this rule will be don't throw garbage on the ground. Put the waste in the bins throughout the zoo. After these 4 rules, I want a general rule for the zoo, so I will create another p element, but this time I will give it a class name because I want to add some styles later. So this class name will be general rules, and the type, the text that I will type will be failure to comply with the rules in force may lead to the expulsion of the visitor. I will now create a location where the Asiatic lion image will be inserted. For that, I will place the image after the final div of the text container, and inside or after this final div, I will insert an image tag with a source attribute and then add the image path to this source. Then between the last and the second to last div, I will then create 2 buttons. These buttons will close the pop-up So the first will have the ID of close-popup with the text close. And the second one will be a button to close the pop-up at the top of the element. And this element will have an ID of page-close-button, and then the text will be an X. We have the HTML defined already, so let's check what appears in the browser. We can see that the elements are there, but we need to apply some CSS styles, which is what we are going to do now. Here in CSS, we'll go to the end of the page and apply styles to the overlay first. The overlay will be a screen that appears after clicking the rules button, and it will serve to allow us to close the pop-up without the need to click the close button or the X that we defined earlier. So to style this overlay, I will set the display to none because I don't want this overlay to be visible. The position will be fixed. Top will be 0, left 0 as well. Width will be 100%, height 100% as well. Then we will set a background or a RGB color to the background. So let's set this to 0, 0, 0, and then 0.5. And then the index, I want it to be 999. I set the z index to 999 because I want the overlay to appear behind the pop-up. If we look at the map, we see that the overlay doesn't appear, but if we delete this first line, it immediately shows up on the screen. It's this gray screen with transparency. Let's set the display back to none and set the styles to the pop-up. So let's type dot popup. Display will be none as well because I want the pop-up to appear after. Actually, we can set the code of the display after all of it. So position will be fixed. Let's start with this one. Top will be 50%, left 60%. Let's see how it's going. Okay, we can see that the map returned to the original position because we set the position of the pop-up to fixed. Now let's type transform translate minus 50% and then minus 50% as well. Then I want the background with the following code: F5 ECE 3. Finally, padding, I want it to be 0. Border radius, something like 10 pixels. Let's take a look at how it's shaping up. We already have some changes here. Back to VS Code, I will now create a box shadow with the following values. So let's start with 0, 4 pixels, 8 pixels. And since I want a transparency, I will set the color to 0, 0, 0, 0.1. And the z index must be higher than the overlay, so this time I will give a value of 1000. And finally, I will set the width to 100%. Let's see how it's looking. So the pop-up is too large. as you can see. Let's go back to VS Code and I will add max dash width and set this to maybe 800 pixels. Okay, looks better, but there's more work to do. I will now apply styles to the overlay when it appears. So I want to display a block and then position fixed. Let's do a similar thing to the popup.show. So this time for the popup. This one, the display will be block as well. But now I will set an animation to the pop-up when it shows up. So animation, I want it to be a slide in. And I will set these values. 0.5 seconds is out, forwards. So these styles we created will only be triggered when we will apply JavaScript to these elements. Let's now add styles to the content container. So let's type content-container, open brackets, and the first style will be display. I want it to be flex this time. Align items, I want it to be stretch. Let's now move to the next one. This will be the text-container. And I want it to be flex 1. So I want the text to be on the left side. So I will set this to 1. Padding, I want 20 pixels. And let's see how it's looking. Much more interesting than before. We already have the text on the left side and the image on the right, but the pop-up is filling the entire screen, and we don't want that. I will start to apply the style of the general rule since I wanted to give it more emphasis. So let's type general rule, open brackets. I want the font weight to be bold in this case. So it failed. Something it's not working. Why? Maybe the class name it's not general rule. Let me check on the HTML. Let's go to the back here. Yeah, I typed general rules. Let's remove the S from this class name. And yes, this general rule is now bold. Let's now add styles to the image inside the pop-up. So I want pop-up image. I want the width to be 50% in this case. And for the flex, I want it to be the same of the text container. So I will say that flex will be 1. Okay, nothing happens because it's not pop image, but pop up image. Let's check again. And now the pop-up is way more interesting. So we just need to move these 2 buttons to the right place. But first, let's enhance a little bit more this pop-up. So here on this pop-up image, I want to set some new classes. So object fit, I want it to be cover. Height, I want it to be 100%. And border top, right radius, I want 10 pixels because I want this to be rounded like the other 3 corners. Let me set the bottom right corner to a 10 pixel radius as well, because after we move the buttons from the bottom of the pop-up, the corner will have a sharp corner as well. So let me add this to this image. Let's now add margin 0. And now we just need to move the buttons to the right place. And we cannot forget to set the pop-up, the display of the pop-up to none. So after, only after we clicked on this rules button, the pop-up will appear. So first it needs to be, the display needs to be none, okay? Let's now end this part with the styles of these two buttons. Let's start with the close dash pop-up ID. So let's type close dash pop-up and open brackets. And for this style, I want this to have a position absolute. Top, I want it to be 85%. Left, 15%. So the button moved. Let's now add some more styles. Transform, translate, and I want to translate Y to be minus 50%. After that, I want width 20%, padding 10 pixels. Okay, now the button is centered to the left side of the pop-up. But now let's just change the color of the button. Let's start with the background color, and I want this 333 code. For the text color, I want maybe the color white. Let's see. Border, I want it to be none, but border radius, I will set the border radius to 5 pixels. To the 4 parts. Cursor, I want it to be pointer. Okay, so instead of the arrow, after we hover through the button, the cursor changes to pointer. Text align center, and the button is fully defined. Let's now add a style after we hover this button. So I want to type close dash pop-up over, open brackets, and I want the background of this button to change from the color 333 to this light gray. So let's see. Okay, and that's what I want for this button. Let's move to the next button, so this page close button. So this is the next that I want to place it on the top right corner of the lion image. So let's start by typing page dash close dash button, open brackets. I want the position of the X to be fixed. Top, I want 20 pixels. And right, I want 20 pixels as well. Font weight, I want it to be bold, to be more noticeable. Color, let's see this one. Okay, it's now on the correct place. Background, I want background none, so I don't want any background. Border, none as well. Cursor, I want it to be pointer as well. and the index I want it to be above the image, so I want it to be 1001. And now the button is finished. I want to apply another animation as well. So I want to do the same thing, called page close button, then hover, and I want the color to change from that dark gray to this white color. To finalize, let's create the code that will make the pop-up open and close by clicking the rules button, the two close buttons, and as well the overlay that we defined at the beginning of this video. We can actually check this overlay now that we have the pop-up in the right position. So let's remove this display, and we can see this transparent gray background that will serve us to close this pop-up as well. Okay, so let's set the display back to none on the overlay. The pop-up can be visible for now, and here on JavaScript, let's start with another code. Let's create a description here so we know what we are doing. So this one will be pop-up, and let's start with document dot get element by ID, and the ID will be rules-link. And in this rules-link, or our button, I want to add an event listener of click. So after we click on the rules link, I want a function to be triggered. So this function will be document.getElementById as well, and we will select the overlay, and I want the class list to be show. So at first the overlay, the display of the overlay is none, but after we click this rules button, the overlay changes from display none to display show. Okay, so it appears after we click on the rules link. Still inside this function, I want the document.getElementById pop up, and then class list show as well. And I noticed that we forgot something here on the class list. We want to say class list.add show. Okay, so I want to add a class of show, and here for the pop-up I want to add class list add show as well. Okay, so after we click on the rules button, as you can see, the overlay and the pop-up appear. So the pop-up is still there because I didn't set the display back to none. So if I type display none here and we go back to the map, let me restart here, and you click on rules, the pop-up and the rules appear. Let's go back to VS Code, and now I want to define a function as well to close the pop-up. So after we click on these rules, the pop-up appears, but now we cannot close this pop-up. For this new function, I want to type document.getElementById close dash pop-up, add a clickable event listener, so add event listener click, then function, and for this function the first line will be document.getElementById overlay class list dot, this time I want to be remove instead of head, and I want to remove the class show. Since we want the same thing for the pop-up, we just need to copy the first line, change this from overlay to pop-up, and if we go back to the map, after we click rules, now we can close the pop-up by clicking on this close button. But we want to apply apply this to the X button and as well to this overlay. So after we click this overlay, I want the pop-up to be closed as well. So let's start with a new function. So let's type document get element by ID, overlay, add event listener, click, a new function, and inside this function I want to get document get element by ID, overlay again, dot, class list remove, and then show. Copy this line and change overlay to pop-up. Let's go back to the browser, click rules, and the pop-up is now closing after we click on this overlay, and we just need to do the same thing for the X button. So I'll just copy this, change overlay to the ID of the X button. It's page dash close dash button, overlay class list remove show, and pop-up class list remove show as well. Let's see if it's working. Close and overlay works, and if we close on X, it's working as well. To improve how the pop-up appears on the screen, we can now add some CSS transition. For example, a slide in effect. That's what I'm going to do. So back to CSS, let's type add keyframes slide in. Here at the top, let me see. Here on pop-up show, we had animation slide in 0.5 seconds is out forwards. So we want to apply this transition here on the bottom of this CSS page. Okay. So first I want from transform translate minus 50%, minus 100% scale, 0.8. So I want it to start from above and then scale to 100%. Let me correct this part here. And I want the opacity to start at 0. Okay. We can see that something is changing. Let's go back to VS Code. And then I want to say to transform as well, translate again, minus 50%, and then minus 50%. And now the scale, I want it to be 1. Opacity, 1 as well. And let's see the result. Well, it's not working. Let's go back to VS Code and see what's going on. And yeah, there's a space here that it shouldn't be. Here after translate, and as well after scale here on the line 303. So let's give a backspace here as well, and now it should work, and it's working. That's all for today's videos. In the next episode we will add some highlights when clicking on the informations, gift shop, picnic area, playground, toilets, coffee shop and parking buttons.